I will speak about the Jews in Venice in the ghettos, in the plural words, because there was not just one ghetto in Venice, but there were at least 3 ghettos, and especially Venice is important because of the origin of the word ghetto itself. So Venice is a beautiful town and has a very important old history and also important Jewish history. Jews were not allowed to live permanently in Venice. They lived in Mestre and in the mainland until about the 14th century. When Venice conquered the mainland and Mestre, some Jews were allowed to stay not permanently but temporarily in the town. There were various orders of expulsion of the Jews from the town until 1496, when the Senate of Venice, please remember that Venice was a democracy, so it didn't have a duke or a king, but it had a Senate who, and this means a lot of things, because when Venice decided to build up the ghetto, it was a quite difficult decision that took months of debate in the Senate of the town. Jews were mainly accepted for as money layer at the beginning, but after the financial crisis of 1499 and bankruptcy of many banks, Jews were granted permission to move from Mestre to Venice as money lenders and bank employees, with freedom of movement and residence. They were not required to, they were not obliged to have a symbol or sign like in other towns of Italy. So they could move, at the beginning, they could move very freely in the town. And they could even rent houses and make any sort of job. At that time, there were probably 500 or 700 Jews in Venice. At the beginning, the most important group in the ghetto was made up by Jews of German origin. This is an assumption of a local historian called Calimani. The nearby city of Padua, which is just 40 kilometers from Venezia, was flourishing. There was a flourishing Jewish community, very important, with very important rabbis in all the 16th century, like Judah Mainz, an important Talmudist, his son, and Meyer Katzenellenbogen. Katzenellenbogen was born in 1492 in Germany and died in Padua in 1565. It is important because we know by sure that these rabbis of Padua used to commute quite often from Padua to Venice to be rabbis in the Jewish community of Venice, which, as we will see, was founded at least 20 years after the institution of the ghetto. The Jews' right to remain in the ghetto and to settle in the was in a limbo for a long time because of these troubles and government debates in the Senate. And so they used to change very often the term of the conduct until the Senate established the ghetto in the year 1516. So I did a timetable for the main history of, as you see, in 1516, the first ghetto of the world was established in Venice with a decree in a very funny Venetian dialect, who says that the Jews has to live closed in a place near the church of San Girolamo. They cannot go around by night, and there is a small bridge that they have to close, and they have to make two doors that will be open at the morning when the Marangona bell rings, and will be closed at the evening. And then there will be four guards to be safe that the guards will be paid by the Jews in the ghetto. The thing is that the first ghetto was called Ghetto Nuovo. And as you will see, this led a lot of confusion for the scholars and the researchers, because the oldest ghetto is called Ghetto Nuovo. Few years later, the first two synagogues were built up. In 1527, the Scuola Grande Tedesca, large German synagogue, and later in 1531, the Scuola Canton, which is also Ashkenazi. In 1541, please remember this year because this date is quite important. In the area of the old copper foundry was granted a place to the Levantine Jews. So the Ghetto Vecchio is newer than the Ghetto Nuovo. Just a moment. The Levantine was a group composed of Spanish refugees, merchants from the Ottoman Empire, but originally from the Iberian Peninsula and from Italy. They had frequented the Venetian markets for centuries. Initially, they had been limited of time of residence in the town, but at this time, they were exempt from paying any taxes, even favored in comparison of the German Jews. The municipality of Venice, always seeking new sources of incomes and new markets, decided in 1541 to increase the number of the Jews and of the merchants. This group of exiles settled in the ghetto, and it was in a heterogeneous group made of Spanish, Portuguese, wandered Jews who came back from the Ottoman Empire, and most of them were wandering and since 1492, so for 50 years, probably they were moving from the Iberian Peninsula to the Ottoman Empire, to the Balkan, and then they came back in the ghetto of the Levantini. The Levantine Jews flourished very much, and in few decades, the wealth increased the German. So the German, which were the first Jews of Venice, and then they decreased as importance because of these new incomers with very strict connection with the markets of the Ottoman Empire and the South Italy. Yes, curiously, and the reason of the opening of the second ghetto are mainly economic. So there was not a sort of people were not obliged strictly to stay in the ghetto, but they were invited. And this is a phenomenon in Italy of a sort of competition between the states of the Italian peninsula to attract Jews and attract even also Sephardic Jews. For instance, in Ancona in 1526 was given a Jewish permission to Jewish merchants to stay and reside in the town. In Ferrara, Ercole II, from 1538, invited Levantine and Portuguese Jews to settle. And in Tuscany also, starting to the middle of the century, Jews were invited. So in Venice simply followed this sort of wave of inviting the Jews for economic reason. So, thus, the establishment of the old ghetto is not so much a closure, but is an expansion of the spaces to attract Jewish merchants. Precisely the arrival of the Levantine merchants, there was a flourishing of the life in the ghetto. Just a moment. Then later, in 1575, the Scuola Siciliana, the Italian synagogue, was built up, and because of the increasing number of the Sephardic Jews, that they were called mainly Ponentini or Levantini, in 1581, another synagogue was set up. Then the ghettos became so crowded that in 1633, the Ghetto Novissimum, the very new ghetto, was added, also in this case mainly to house Ponentine Jews. So in Venice, there is a scuola, a synagogue, Sephardic, but I would say that most of the population is called Ponentine or Levantine, which has Sephardic origin. Now, this is a map of the three ghettos of Venice. And this is a map of the ghettos with the various synagogues. Speaking about resources for genealogy, I would stress up that most of the synagogues had their own rabbis and their own registers. To make researches, generally you have to understand in which of the ghettos your family lived. One of this is a map of the wave of expulsions of the Jews from Italy. As you see, Venice is one of the first ghetto of Italy, and those wave of expelled from the South Italy moved into Venice, not because obliged, but most probably and generally because of the of the wealth of the town and the possibility to make a good business with the lands of the dominion of Venice. So here's a amount of Jews who lived in Venice in the modern area. As you see, there have been some increase and decrease. One of the most decreased because was of the plague. The plague was very hard and did a lot of deaths in the ghettos of Venice, but this give us also a good source, because so this is one of the map of the house of the ghetto. There are some sketch of the houses. As you see, they live very stuffed in the houses, but is useful because in some cases there are also name of the inhabitants of the ghetto. So this is, the first source is connected with the plague. In 1630, there was a very strong wave of plague in all Europe and in Venice. A special magistrate called Ufficiale della Sanità made a list of all the death of plague in the town, and also the death Jews who were affected by the plague. This is the name of the person who are recorded in the Magistrato di Sanità, and by the meaning of the family name, you can understand the origin So few are from Ashkenaz, some are from France, many are from Italy, and I did also a sort of comparison between Sephardic and Ottoman Empire Jews, because some of the Jews in Venice came from Amorea, Greco, Naso, which is Naxos, and as you see, the Sephardic Jews were quite important. You see the family names: Del Medico, De Leon, Lombroso, Malta, Marocco, Maza, Mochado, Mora, and so on. Of course, some of the family names don't give information about the origin of the Jews, but if you dig in the archive, there are even more resources on the 17th century. So, some family names of the death of the plague cannot be classified, like Cohen, Levi, Kabib, Grassin. Few are Ashkenazi. Here are some family names of Jews from Italy. Some Levantine, which cannot be easily distinguished by the Sephardic, because most of Levantine, as I said before, were coming from Spain and then went to the Ottoman Empire and then came back to Venice for economic reason. This is a list of Jews in the German community, which is not of our interest for the moment. This is a list of Jews around of the Ponentine community, and they were extracted with a special edict, and they were called Levantini Viandanti. Most of them were merchants to peddlers to move in town and sell goods in the town. Here it is: nota degli mercanti leviantini viandanti, the list of the merchant peddlers that live in the rooms of the ghetto, and they are settled and live in these rooms for the former time. As you see from the family names, there is Abudaram, Temisar, Sasson, Carcassoni, Almonsino, most of them. So most of the merchant peddlers which arrived after the Germans are from Ponentine origin or Spanish. So the Spanish group became larger than the original German group of Jews in Venice. If you want, we can come later on this list. The first complete list of the Jews in Venice is quite late. In this case, I would say that it's very rich and important and source, because it lists for every family, as we will see. In 1797, for every family, it lists the household, the head of the family, the composition of the family with the age of all the members, and fortunately also the profession and the origin of the family. When doing genealogical researches, we are often interested in horizontal sources, because census give you quite well the possibility to find if your family is in a town. That is, if in this case, if you want to know if your family was in Venice, you have to go through the register and find the family name. while the vertical sources in genealogy, in most cases, gave you the paternity or the of one family. In this case, you follow the alphabetical list, and you search for your family. You see in the left column, it is Canal Reggio, Campiello, Ghetto Nuovo, where the household and was living. In one case, it was Ghetto Nuovo, Abitur Salon, and the profession, and also very rich of information of the whole family. From this census, I did a research on the places of immigration to Venice of the Jews from the Venetian dominions. As you see, many Jews came from the Venetos, that is from the land near to the town. You see, the first part are Italian Jews. And then the second list is Jews from overseas and abroad, Corfu, Germany, justly from Frankfurt, Split, Tripoli, Zante, Poland, and Constantinople. This is the entering of the census. The problem is that probably it should be also made a sort of database to build up the families from this census, but it is very, very important and rich, because in this case you can easily find, you see, some come from Ferrara, some from on the origin column. You can trace the origin of the population of the Jews in Venice. This is a project to build up a database of the Jews in Venice with some list. Not all the lists are complete, like the census of 1797, but some lists are nearly complete, like the list of 1632. Just a moment. I will show later. I'll show later this source. In the archives of Venice, if you dig, you can find also list of the Jews who lived in the dominions of the town, which were spread through all the Adriatic Sea and even in the Ottoman Empire. There are some register of the notary who worked in Constantinople, for instance, which are stored in the archive of Venice, and could be very interesting to go through those registers. This is a list of Corfu, inhabitants, Jewish inhabitants of Corfu. As you see, nota delle famiglie dei bei forestieri, Zante. As you see, there is all the families comes from the Ottoman Empire, few from Italy. Vitali, Constantini comes probably from Constantinople. Colli, Ashkenazi, Salmon. Probably other lists can be found for other places in the Venetian dominions. These are Jews who live in Zante, but they are origin from Corfu. There is at least Shabbatai Cohen Rabbin da Corfu. Now, speaking about resources for Jewish genealogy in Venice, I would speak first of all about publication. There is a collection of books on the works, on the activity of the Tribunal of the Inquisition, and this researcher, Pier Cesare Zorattini, went through the register and did a report of all the process and all the causes against the Jews and the people convicted by the Inquisition. These are 12 registers. As you see, they begin from 1548. And if your family was catched by the Inquisition, probably your name and the transcription of the process will be in these registers. Now I'm speaking about the important Jews who lived in Venice that came up going through the register. In this case, as you see at the end of the image, there is David Pomes, which is an important scholar who wrote the first vocabulary in Italy of the Jewish language, Jewish, Latin, and Aramaic. Copia tratta dal libro della Sinagoga Levantini, abitanti e viandanti. Copy from the book of the Synagogue of Levantines, who lives or are peddlers. 1585. This is a part of a register of rabbinic decision. As you see in the in the fourth line, Samuel Judah Katznailambogen, judge, giudice, is one of the first quotation of the Katzenellenbogen in a secular register, and some scholar they thought that the Jews did not use their proper Jewish family names in the 16th century, but as you see from this excerpt, the writer tried to write down in Italian a German family name, so Katznailambogen. So you can find really the original spelling, and without any doubt is the famous Samuel Katzenellenbogen. Now about the connection between Venice and Europe. So Venice had very strict relation with his dominion in all the Mediterranean Sea, but was also a passage of Jews to Central Europe. As I told before, Padua was an important Jewish center and had a very important Jewish community. It was also a place of an important university. In Padua, studied a noble from Poland, Zamoyski, who founded the town of Zamość. He called in his town the Jews to improve the trades and the welfare of the town. This is a list of the heads of family in Zamość in the year 1588 and 1650. As you see, there are many Italians, and two of them are strictly defined as Venetian. So this strange wave of immigration from south to north, it still has to be studied in detail, and it means that Ashkenazi Jews have, in some case, strong roots in Italian or Sephardic Judaism. It would be interesting to find the exact connection of these names of Jews who lived in Poland with the archives in Venice. About the connection of the Venice with North Europe, I have to mention also that in Amsterdam and Holland, the influx of the Sephardic Jewish culture and Italian culture was strong. So apparently the Sephardic community in Amsterdam inspired his statute to the statute of the Jews in Venice. So you can find often in North Europe Jews who has origin from Venice. I did in the past years some researchers who traced the origin of important person in Europe, and in this case I did a research on Maurice de Hond, a Dutch entrepreneur and famous commentator about Poles and Dutch politics, and this came up that his ancestors were from Venice. They lived in Venice until the 16th century, and then they moved up in Holland, probably following a wave of emigration to the more rich Holland when Venice became in crisis with the trades in the East Mediterranean. Another person who has Venetian origin is Heidi d'Ancona, a minister of welfare, health and culture and state secretary of social affairs and employment in Holland. She was member of the European Parliament, and it came up that also her ancestors came from Ancona, as her family names says, but went from Ancona in Venice and stayed there for at least 2 or 3 centuries. Just a moment, I want to show you also some other sources available. Okay. If you have some question, I can answer now, or we do later. I have some images of other sources, can be interesting.
Shall we do the questions at the end?
Okay, because I don't find a slide that was important for me. The project of database, I propose you. Yes, so these are the sources for Jewish genealogy in Venice. Most of the registers are stored in the archive of the Jewish community, and unfortunately they're not always accessible, and because they are somehow nasty in a way, and but if we make a group of research, I'm sure that will be easier to access the registers. The project could be to make a database of the newer, so the matrimonies which are very rich of information from 1815, and the death register are very scarce of information, but they are very old, as you see, from 1601. The best thing should be to improve the research. These are the chances that I spoke about. So the first one is a list of head of a household of 1,632, which I'm entering. And then there are list of 1,810 of the old Venetian region, which we could go through and find the Jews of Venice and in the Venetian region. Okay, it's all for the moment, and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you very much. Can you close the your sharing?
Yes, just a moment.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. That was excellent. The first thing that struck me is I always assumed the Venetian community was much larger. I mean, I assumed it was like tens of thousands of people, and
No, no.
it's just a few thousand. That actually amazed me. Um, but the second, obviously, here we're just starting to scratch the surface. I was interesting that you were talking about Zamoysk because that's something that a few weeks ago Ton was talking about when we were discussing possibilities of Sephardim in Eastern Europe. And if I understand correctly, that what you're speculating is essentially what Ton was speculating, that that community came out of Italy. I mean, maybe you've given a reason through a connection with Padua, but is that just speculation, or are you kind of quite confident?
No, I mean, as you know, there are not many sources in Zamość to understand where the Sephardi community came from, but this is one. I mean,
Yes.
it's at least half of the list is of Italian origin,
Yeah.
are specifically of Venetian origin. My idea is that one of the source to demonstrate physically the passage, it should be the notarial collection in Padua.
Yes.
Because when Zamość, who studied in Padua, went and founded the town, but sure, he invited, for instance, Morando. You know, Morando is architect who designed the town of Zamość. And Morando was from Veneto.
Okay.
And so, by probably there are some records of, but it's a very academic. For our research on our roots is more is better to study the sources of the family who arrived in Venice and not the family. So the families from the Dominion who arrived in Venice, because if you
Yes.
make your family tree back to, let's say, the 17th century, and you find that your family comes from Corfu, now you know that the sources are there, are in Venice.
Yeah.
It's more easy to find documents on the places of arrival. And so Zamość is a fascinating story that is coming up recently. I mean, now we have some resources there, and there are probably resources in Venice and in Padua of this family who migrated for economic reason because there was a sort of economic crisis in the Mediterranean Sea.
And another, I mean, there must be so many resources there. A source that wasn't mentioned, not necessarily for Venice, but a Venetian view of diaspora Jewish communities, is the whole sort of diplomatic network of Venice. When we study English Tudor history, we always have the commentary of the Venetian various Venetian ambassadors on King Henry VIII and his various wives, and it's very insightful. But there's an enormous amount there. But I should shut up. Ton, over to you.
You're muted. I was under the impression that Sephardim came much earlier to Venice, but instead they came 50 years after the expulsion.
Yes.
Is there an explanation for that?
Apparently, I read the historical literature, but apparently they were at the beginning the German were invited because of money lenders and because Padua was rich of German Jews. I don't know if there is any special. I don't know the reason, but as I see, most of them were Ponentines. So already wandering in the Ottoman, in the Mediterranean area.
Okay. One thing about this Professor Zoratini, who did a lot of research into the Venetian Inquisition archives. Sadly, he passed away a few months ago, which is a great loss for science and for humanity. About the mosque, this family Zacuto, I understood that they came from Amsterdam, and later, after they left the mosque, settled in Italy, especially this Moses Zacuto, the Remef, who was a famous Kabbalist.
No,
And, on the list there was also Yehuda Zacuto. He is also from Amsterdam and went back to Amsterdam. So it's not all Italians, but on the whole, I agree that most of these Zamosk people came from Italy.
It could be that in Zamość they recorded as Italian, but they came just in the last time from Italy. So we don't know exactly the resources in Zamość. So maybe they are all they were in Italy as a passage. So if you say that they came from Holland.
Yeah, and before that from Portugal. So I think this list was made later, maybe a few centuries later, with knowledge that was gained in hindsight. So who knows? And no, Ponentines, you explained, they are Levantines. And these are from the near Middle East, I believe?
Yes.
Okay. And I see that Bernard Miller has his hand up. Bernard?
Hello, thank you very much for that presentation, which was fascinating. And I've got a particular thanks. I've been trying for the last couple of years to locate one of my many 10th great-grandfathers, who was a Baruch Sarfati, born in Venice in 1605, and haven't got anywhere with the Sarfati side, but I saw in one of the lists you showed earlier that it was written with a Z. And I've never looked for it with a Z. I've looked for various spellings with S and not been lucky. So thank you for that. I have a couple of specific questions. One, you've referred a lot to Padova or Padua, and both its status as a Jewish center, but also because of its university. And I wondered if you could tell me a couple of things. One, was it a democracy like Venice, or did it have a different form of government? And about the university, a lot of my ancestors, I discover, studied there, mainly medicine. And I wondered at what point it became open to Jews to study there, and what were the subjects that they studied, if you know that. And I've got two other small questions afterwards.
But these are enough. No, the Padua was not, it was an oligarchy. But it was not, you know, that the model of Venice is studied in modern contemporary political science as a model of early democracy. And while Padua was, like most of the state of Italy, an oligarchy with few families who ruled the town. About the university is very interesting because there are some publication and also publication on the Jews laureate graduate in Padua, and maybe if you write me, I can look on in some list on your Sarfatis. And I'm sure that the Jews were allowed in the University of Padua very early. I can say when, probably in the 16th century, and I went in the university because I know that there is some records, there are some register of graduate, and but also somebody, if you want, I can give you a list of this publication with some names. And the fact is that it was really a center for the Jews and for non-Jews, and students came from all over Europe in Padua, much before than the Jews in Venice sprout. So if you can imagine, Katzenelnbogen came from the north of Germany. Yeah. There to teach with Mainz also, who was from North Europe. So if you write me in private, I will look at the lists.
Thank you. I will. And just two short questions. One, there's a street in Venice which is nowhere near the ghettos called Rugagiufa. What is the origin of that? Because I understand it means Jew Street. And the other is, in my family, there was quite a lot of migration from Venice to Hamburg, and I wondered how common that was.
No, you know, the first I don't know. I don't know even the
Rugagiufa.
Giufa.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I understand Ruga because it's the name of a streetlet, a small street, yes. And about the migration to Hamburg, you know, when people move, they generally leave some traces when they arrive, but quite difficult they leave traces when they leave a place.
Fair enough.
So I never found. But I will check also because something on Hamburg I found in the few register in Venice, very interesting, because there was a quarrel between some Levantine and they had to demonstrate their origin. So few families says we come from Sicily, we come from, and that could be something interesting to see at least the origin. When they go away, people don't leave traces of the.
Sure. The ones that I'm thinking of in particular were Meldola from Venice, who moved to Hamburg.
In a few minutes I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to George, just following on from one of the issues Bernard was raising about the Sarfati family. In the chat, Arnold writes, were the Sarfati family Sephardim? I'm descendant of Nathaniel Sarfati of Amsterdam, late 18th century, who was prominent in the Sephardic community in Holland. Have you come across, oh, sorry, second question. Have you come across the Foa family from Reggio?
No. The Foa family, I can look in the list I have. Foa family is very frequent, common in Piedmont area, of course. Yeah. I have to check in the list because, you know, while in Livorno, for instance, most of the family names are Sephardic or Italians. In Venice, there are many family names which are Ponentine, or it's difficult to understand exactly the origin. So even in the Comunità Tedesca, which is the origin of the community, in the 16th century was full of family names of Spanish origin.
Yes. Okay, thank you. George, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, two things. One, if I'm not mistaken, when the Abravanel left Spain, they first settled in Naples,
Yeah.
and ultimately ended up in Venice not very long after, because the Spaniards had invaded the Kingdom of Naples. Do you have any background on that? And then I'll have a second question.
So I found many times the Benvenida Bravanel in Tuscany, but at my memory, I've not found her in Venice. But could be that I can check also the list I did, but at memory I don't remember Bravanel.
Yeah. Second, about the Foa family. Certainly, they already appeared in the 1300s in Piemonte. And as I was leafing through some old books that I inherited from my great-grandfather, I noticed that there were books published by the Foa family in Riva di Trento, right during the period of the Council of Trent. And then, in fact, there was a series of a six-volume, excuse me, sorry, and which the publication was then interrupted, and they were driven out because they'd published a book that the bishop disapproved of. And then they showed up in Venice briefly, and then I found a book in the series, and I opened it, and on the cover was the coat of arms of the Foa family, published in Amsterdam. So they followed a whole batch of your transitions, and I thought that was a very interesting linkage, which I'd never sensed until I heard your talk.
Yes, but if you want also, in this case, I can look in the list if there is, I found Foa family in Venice and Abravanel, but Abravanel, I don't, frankly, I don't remember. I followed the family in Tuscany, so I would probably have remembered if Abravanel settled in, just 1 second. Let me see.
Bravanel split. There was a daughter who was a friend, I believe, of a Neapolitan princess who married a duke, married a noble in Tuscany, and that woman followed her friend. The father and her brother, I believe, ended up in Venice at some point, but I may be wrong on that.
Just a moment, Bravanel. Yes. So in 1727, there is a house owned by Abravanelli. 1727. So indeed, I entered the name. The Abravanel.
Movements would have been in the 1500s.
Huh. That was I entered this.
I understand. I may be wrong too.
No, okay. Yes, they were in the ghetto of Venice anyway in the 18th century.
Okay. George also asked in the chat if you could share your slides with him.
Which one?
The slides of your presentation.
Yes, it will be online. Will be.
Okay.
Yes.
Alain has a question.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for this nice presentation. I have a question concerning the Picciotto family. We know the Picciotto came from Portugal to Tuscany. We do have a record of a Picciotto in Rome in 1550. And I do have, because the Picciotto were a very powerful family in the Middle East, who ended up for 100 years as Italian consuls. I have a lot of them who died in Venice in 1631. And in your list that you have shown us, I don't see a single Picciotto living in Venice.
Ah, okay. In 1631 could be the plague death, or you know from the register of plague death. I can check in the list of Venice.
Well, I can give you the name of all the descendants who went from Livorno to Venice. And then after Venice, they went back to Livorno, and from Livorno, when they became fairly wealthy, they ended up in the Middle East, and they were called Francos. They were not called Sephardim. And these Francos are the Ancona, the Silvera, a lot of Italian family. Not all of them from Venice, but the Picciotto are definitely, some Picciotto have definitely passed away and lived in Venice. There was a Rav Isaac who married a lady called Fior, and she died the 15th of December, 1628, near Padua. And their sons also died in 31 and 22nd of July or 30th of July. Is Padua considered not Venice?
I entered some of names in the list I found, but for the moment I have not Picciotto in Venice. So probably we should go also because you are speaking about the 16th century, don't you?
Yeah, this is 16th century. I mean, later they moved to back to Livorno, and from Livorno to Aleppo. That's when they became very big traders and pillar of the Franco community there. Very wealthy, and they became consul of the old Republic of Italy, including the United States in 1905. Some of them, by the way, when they were in Portugal, they were called Picciotto, and some of them went to Amsterdam. Some went to Brazil. Of course, the Brazilian guys were not Jewish, but the Picciotto who went to Amsterdam were Jewish, and you can find them in England as well.
Yes. So now I see in 1709, the 20th of January, una putela di Mosè Picciotto, a small girl of Mosè Picciotto. These are the death list, yes. Now, the plague list of the Provveditoria alla Sanità, which is this sort of judge to the health of the town of Venice.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm not trying to track any particular one in particular, but because that has already been done by the Picciotto family. There is a book that was published years ago about 100 years of the diplomatic assignments, if you want. But by the way, the Picciotto in Aleppo in the Middle East, they were separated in two clans. One was Picciotto proper, and the other one De Picciotto, because they were part of the Austrian-Hungarian realm, and they gave them a title. They refused the word von, the German one, and they chose the word De Picciotto, which is more French. They were all French speaking when they were in Aleppo.
Yes. So also to you, if you write me, I will look what I have about the Picciotto in Venice. Okay.
By the way, the whole genealogy is on my website, fahi.org.
Important website, I know it.
All right, thanks for your help. Great presentation.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat from Catherine. Where would I look for information about Dario Castello, a musician born in Venice in 1602 and died in 1631, possibly of the plague?
Yes, in the list of the death by plague, and in which are stored in the Archivio di Stato, and probably you won't find nothing in the archive of the Jewish community because that start later. And but generally the records of the Magistrato della Sanità are quite complete. So I assure you that the deaths of plague are all recorded in Archivio di Stato.
Do you know, I mean, it's such a huge subject, but I mean, broadening it out, are there surviving archives on things like court records, tax records, and so forth, in which Jews might appear?
You know, about the 5 synagogues that were in the ghettos, Scuola Spagnola had an archive, but it starts later in the 19th century for some historical reason. So in the archive of the Jewish community, there are no lists of the Spanish synagogue before the half of the 19th century, but there are lists in some magistrate or judge of the town. So
Yes.
because for tax purpose and so on. So we are speaking about one of the component of the Jewish population in Venice, because there were 5 synagogues.
Yeah, yes, and you mentioned briefly the notarial archives of Padua. What about of Venice?
Yes, I went through some register in Venice.
Yeah.
In Padua is much, the notarial archive is very well indexed. I mean, register by register, not nobody went through the register, but we have a project with the rabbi of Padua to go through some of those registers, because Padua in the 16th century was so important. In Venice, there are few seldom random registers of the town, and in some cases the witnesses are indexed. So in Archivio di Stato, State Archive, there are some list of witnesses for all the town, and you go through the I say testaments.
Yeah.
Testaments, and then in some cases we find testament of Jews.
Interesting. Thank you. It's such a huge subject that I think we need to return to it multiple times. Ton, are there any more, or does anyone have any other questions, or do we have any questions?
Yeah,
Bernard is waving his hand, so you're muted.
Yeah, just a quick question. I haven't been to Venice for years, and I'm now in a wheelchair. And Venice doesn't strike me as being a very accessible city for people in wheelchairs. If I wanted to do archive research, are most of the places where the archives are located accessible or not?
Well, the State Archive is on the yes. I will focus. I think you can go in the State Archive, not in the archive of the Jewish community. Has got a small stair, and if you want to go through register of the 16th, 17th century, the State Archive is the best. And if I remember well, is on the land floor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more?
Yeah, Martin raised his hand. Martin, can you unmute and possibly turn on your video? Martin, or was this by mistake?
Okay. Yes. Hello.
Hello.
And thank you, Nardo, for that excellent explanation and summary of all your years and years of work. And in fact, he helped me discover ancestors in in Venice, the Katzenelebogens. And I'm sure you remember that. It was very exciting. We went, and I just wanted to mention this as an additional source of information, which is the cemetery in in an island off of Venice.
Lido.
Lido. And fascinating because there's one area that has been cordoned off and made the Jewish cemetery, and lots of information there. And as I mentioned, that's where we found the tombstone of Katzenelebogen, which other people had said were elsewhere. So it was very interesting, and there were many tombstones to be found there. Only though what Napoleon left, because apparently he took many of the tombstones to use as defense in another part of Venice. So I would just include that as an additional source of information.
That's
Thank you,
true.
Nardo.
No, thank you to you. That's true. The source of tombstone generally is not very rich, but in case of Venice is very rich because many of them are monumental, and the Katzenelebogen tombstone was also beautiful. And unfortunately, no, they are not still in the original places, but there are some lists of tombstones, so the researcher can go through the list quite easily. Thank you for remembering me. Yes, remember these important sources.
Welcome. Cheers.
And this project to go through the notarial register in Padova, especially for the 16th century, could be a research from an academic point of view also, because there are few publications on the connection between Padova and Venice, and between Padova and Central Europe, for instance.
So I think one last question from George in the chat. Has the Shlomo Simonson project to find the old official records relative to Jewish communities of Italy collected official state records from Venice?
Yeah, I know that some.
Sorry, could you actually tell us what the Shlomo Simonson project is? I'm afraid I've never heard of it.
No, it's Shlomo Simonson did a research very deep in the archives of Sicily, called the Documentary History of the Jews of Italy. Only on Sicily there are nearly 15 volumes with tens of thousands of documents, and because Sicily was important for the Mediterranean history. So I spoke with Shlomo Simonson some years ago. I proposed to do the same sort of research for Tuscany, especially for Livorno, of course. And but there is not, at my known, there is not a project on Venice. The Central Archive of the Jewish People did some photograph of some of the resources of Venice. So some resources are in Israel as a microfilm.
Okay. There's one more question.
If I could add just a little bit. Simonson also had a number of other researchers, and these have all been published by the University of Tel Aviv. There was a wonderful 3 volumes of the Jews of Piedmont. I believe he also did, he or one of his collaborators did Mantova, and I just don't know what other cities he did.
Padova, they do.
He did Padova as well. Good.
Piedmont was done by Renate Segre, I believe. 3 volumes indeed. There's one more question in chat concerning the Sarfati family from Italy. And the question is if that Sarfati family that begins with a Nathanael Sarfati, is it Sephardic or not?
I think we
And
covered
this
that
is
when you
around
went.
1700.
Don, I think we covered that when you were away.
Ah, sorry. Excuse me.
Okay, I can check if I find Sarfati in Venice. Okay, just a few seconds.
Nardo is doing some live research here.
Yes.
Yes.
And just to remind everyone, we've copied Nardo's
Yes.
website and email into the chat.
In the Levantine synagogue, yes, there was Joseph Sarfati, but we saw that Sarfati can be written as Sarfati. So I should check better if it's Sarfati or Sarfati. But yes, they were also in Venice.
Thank you. I think that wraps it up.
Thank you. Well, it's very interesting also to
Yes.
speak and have a talk with people interested in Venice. Venice is a beautiful town in any case, also to go and visit and
So I will wrap it up, and after that, David will say a few words. Thank you, Nardo, for giving this talk, which is very much needed because Venice is a central hub in the Sephardic world. And we are very grateful that you were prepared to give it. We saw some interesting
for your hospitality
sources.
and for your audience, so patient. And if we make a group of people interested, maybe we can also access easily to the archive of the Jewish community. Because
Yes, we hope so.
Yes.
So this was Sephardic World, brought to you by the Sephardic Genealogical Society. We hope to see you again in 2 weeks' time. And David has...
Yes, we just want to wish everyone well over the fast who's fasting, and wish you boas entradas, and as we say in London, many, many years. We'll be back in 2 weeks if it's not Yom Tov, and I don't think it is, no. But thank you very much, Nardo. It was very useful and important talk, and I think we probably need about five more just to cover Venice. But many thanks to everybody for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.
You.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.